Lang, as Dr. Sotala, we are the advisors for the National Honor Society. So for today, our goal is just to give you an overview of the application process. It's a little bit lengthy, so we want to make sure that everyone has the information you need to fill out the application. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce some of our current officers, and they're going to tell you maybe why you'd want to apply to NHS in the first place, and what they like about NHS. So, Andy, you want to start us off?
Everybody, I'm Andy Swartout, and I'm the treasurer this year. Something I think is important about NHS is obviously if you look at the 4 pillars of our club that we revolve most of our activities around, it's scholarship, leadership, character, and service. And those are all very important things. Scholarship, just doing your best in the classroom, all the way to service, the minimum hours requirement that we have for community service each semester. And at the end of the day, at all of our meetings, we come together and we put our brains together and work together on different projects to help different community organizations or just raise awareness for certain problems in our community. And then on your own, you get to engage in that service however you want to do, whether it's through organizations that you know personally or through opportunities that we give you as a club, and just all over the whole scale of the different things that you can do as an NHS member. I think is very important for your personal development and then also for the positive development of your community and school.
Hi everybody, my name is Justin Leeper and I'm the current secretary of the National Honor Society at Pine-Richland. I think one of the best things about NHS is it really helps me and inspires everybody in the club to really give back to the community as a whole. I personally have started up 2 food drives through the North Hills Community Outreach in our community, and it really helps to just give back to others, and we really help build each other up, and as a group together we'll help everybody in our community and also just learn a lot about leadership skills that are going to be fundamental for your success throughout the rest of your life at the same time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Trench. I'm the current peer tutoring coordinator for the NHS. And I really believe that NHS is one of the better groups within the school because you get out into the world and you actually start doing something. But I think one of the most impactful things that we can do as students is it's really hard to begin something on our own, and being part of a group of over 100 students or in order to complete like a common goal is a really cool thing throughout the high school, right? And competing and cooperating with a lot of the other groups within the school, like the ecology club and environmental, and as well as the other unions within our school. It's a really lovely opportunity for us to have as high school students.
Hi, my name is Ava Cardinali, and I'm one of the service coordinators this year for NHS. And so I second everything the other officers have said, but I think another important thing to make note of is that this is a really great club to all come together and have a common cause. And one of the other pillars that's very important is character. And some of the projects that we do and the service that we do for the community, those are all things that are going to help to build your character and make you a better person. This is definitely a good investment for your future because you're going to be able to learn important skills that you're not going to be able to acquire elsewhere. It's also really important because being surrounded by a group of people who also prioritize school and the other pillar of NHS, scholarship, is really just a great experience so that you're all working kind of towards a common goal. And like I said, it's a great investment for your future, so these are important skills you'll need for college and afterwards.
Okay, so as the officer said, we have 4 pillars of NHS, and so our application kind of revolves around those 4 pillars as well. So the first one I'm going to talk about is scholarship. And that's our kind of how we know if you're eligible to apply for NHS. So you must have a 3.75 cumulative GPA, so that's from the start of your freshman year. And if you meet that requirement, we will automatically send you an application packet. So that is the first pillar, and that's the easiest one in terms of like for us to recognize for your application, because guidance will just give us a list of the students who meet that. So here is, you can see this first slide, that is going to be your first kind of eligibility requirement. We will automatically send you a packet in the summer, usually late June or early July, and that will be how you will kind of start the application process. Okay, so we want to remind you that NHS is not an honor roll. So I think a lot of times when students think about the National Honor Society, they think about the scholarship requirement and they think about a GPA requirement, but that is only one of the 4 pillars. So reminder that just because you get an application packet doesn't mean that you'll automatically be accepted. There does need to be evidence of the 3 other pillars as well. We are looking for students who are genuinely interested in service and leadership, as the officers talked about. So again, it's not an honor roll, and just because you have a really, really high GPA doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be accepted. So just keep that in mind. All 4 pillars are weighted equally. So again, just because you have a really strong GPA, maybe you don't have as much leadership experience, for example. A strong GPA is not going to like balance out another part of your application. So all 4 pillars are weighted equally, and again, they are scholarship, leadership, character, and service. Okay, so if you meet these requirements, and you will get this packet in early summer, and this is what's going to be in your packet. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, and you will have access to this presentation and these slides. They will be on our website. So if you, when you get your application packet, we're going to ask that you have all of these things in it. And if for some reason you're missing something, let one of us know, me or Dr. Swatala, and we can get them to you. So as we go through this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about what each of these things are and kind of what you need to be aware of. So the first 3 of the first 3 bullet points there, the letter of eligibility, the candidacy packet checklist, and the NHS selection criteria are basically just reading material. Now, they're important reading material, but there's nothing you actually have to fill out for those first 3 forms. The checklist is probably you're going to use the most, simply because it has the most information. It's kind of everything in one spot. So make sure you read that carefully and understand what we're asking for. The selection criteria, which is that 3rd bullet point, is probably where you should read the most just before you even start the application, because it talks about the information on the 4 pillars. And we're going to talk about that through this presentation, but it's important that you read that document and make sure you understand what the NHS definitions of these pillars are. So you might have an example of, or you might have a thought as to what leadership means to you, but it might not necessarily overlap exactly with our definition. And so you want to make sure that you're clear on what we're looking for and not just what you think leadership is, because sometimes there can be a discrepancy there and maybe your application is not as strong as it could be because you don't know exactly what we're looking for. And Dr. Swatala will talk to you a little bit later about what we talk, like leadership, for example. Again, check that, look at that checklist often and make sure you're following all the directions there. The last few bullet points here we're going to talk about as we go through. All right, so like I already said, you'll get this in June or July. Make sure you have all the required documents and carefully read everything. There will be part of this application that you'll access online. There's our website there, pinerichland.org/NHS, and you're going to consult that website as well. So this will be the first thing, after you do all your reading materials, this will be probably the first thing that you fill out, and this is our membership requirements form. It will be green in your packet. So this is going to be an acknowledgement that you have read all of the requirements for a National Honor Society, you read our bylaws, and you understand what you're getting yourself into. So a lot of times students know about NHS, and it's a prestigious organization, and so sometimes students will just apply, but they don't really know what they're applying for. And this is us trying to make sure that you understand what this organization is. So you're going to acknowledge that you've read these things. Our bylaws are on our website. We're going to ask that you read that, because again, if you're accepted, we obviously want you to know what we expect of you. So make sure you read carefully. You're going to fill this out, you'll sign it, and so will a parent. This will be the only form that has your name on it. So your application is actually anonymous, which I'll get to in a second. But this form will have your name on it and will be separated, or it will be submitted separately from all your other materials. All right, so like I said, your application for the most, well, it will be anonymous except for that one form, which is separate from your the rest of your application. So it will be anonymous, and so you'll refer to yourself as your student ID number. Your adults who recommend you, we'll talk about that later on, will also always refer to you with a student ID number. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to your application being anonymous. So advantages is that there's no bias when people are reading your application. That's the main reason why we do this. However, from a student perspective, I think sometimes that's a little bit hard for you because you're writing to someone and you're not necessarily used to that. You're used to have someone having context when they're reading your work or you're talking to someone and presenting things about yourself. You're used to have someone having a context, but you're just going to have a piece of paper and they're not going to have any idea who you are. So it's really, really important that you recognize that this is anonymous, and then when you're writing your application, you might have to do a little bit more work because it is anonymous. So you need to make sure you're very specific and detailed in what you're talking about. You can't make any assumptions because no one knows who you are. And I think sometimes that's where you might want to spend a little bit more time making sure you're really detailed and specific when you're talking through your application. What we'll do is when we get all the applications, we'll send it to what we call the faculty council. So the faculty council is made up of staff members in the building. Dr. Satala and I are not on the faculty council, but the faculty council are the teachers and the staff members who read your applications and they vote on acceptance. So again, Dr. Satala and I are not part of that, and we do not have a say in who gets accepted or not accepted. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because as you go through the application process, you might have questions, some things might arise that you need help with, and that's what Dr. Satala and I are here for. So we want to make sure that we are helping you with this process. We're here to facilitate it. And so if you need to ask us something, that's fine, and if your application isn't anonymous to us, we don't read them, so we're not making that vote. So just a reminder to use your resources. If you need help, come talk to one of us. And then I kind of already mentioned this, but it is worth repeating. Make sure you represent yourself well in each section of the application. All 4 pillars are weighted equally. So you got to make sure that you are showing that you're well-rounded and you have experience in these 4 areas. All right, so you'll fill out the green form. And then this is probably what you're going to consider probably the most application portion of the packet that we send you, but it's not actually going to be in your packet, which sounds confusing. But you're going to go to our website and you're going to download, it's a Word document that you're going to type into. And so this will be, there's different various parts of this candidacy form, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So we will, I'll go on and I'll talk about that just in a second. Make sure you proofread this application. People don't do that, and it doesn't look well in the faculty council if you're not proofreading and making sure they don't have typos. All right, these are the sections of the candidacy form. There's an essay that you need to make sure you spend time on. You'll have a prompt. And the one thing I do want to mention here for this the second pillar is service. So this is our service requirement. You need to have completed 20 hours of community service since the start of 9th grade. You'll have to tell us what that service is, and you will have to get that verified with an adult. If you need an adult to send us an email of something that you've done or give us information about what you've done, they can always email us, but just make sure again that they're only referring to you as your student ID number. All right, and then this next section is going to be about our recommendation forms. So the other pillars of leadership and character are going to be evidenced through your recommendation forms. So you're going to make sure you select people in your community who are you trust, who know you well, and they're going to write some recommendation forms for you. All right, make sure you give these people sufficient time to complete these forms. We will give this application to you in July, but it's not due until September, so you have plenty of time to do it. I would give these recommendation forms to these people in July when you get your packet. They are looked at closely by the faculty council, so please tell the people who are writing them that they are important, and we do carefully consider them. You can read through this. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because we have a couple other things to get through. Again, this presentation will be available to you. The main thing here is you need to recognize that these forms will not go back to you when you give your adults a recommendation form, that they will email it direct, or they will send it directly to us. So you're going to give them an envelope that's pre-addressed and pre-stamped, and they're going to send them directly to me. These forms should not go back to you for any reason. In order to help you with this process, because you're not going to get these forms back, you probably want to verify that these forms have gotten to me. So what we do every year is we set up a Google Classroom. There will be a code in your application packet over the summer. You should join that classroom as soon as you get your packet. And as I get recommendations, I log them into the spreadsheet by your student ID number. So I will see your student ID, I will record the names, and you'll be able to tell if your adults have gotten, if they've gotten their forms to me. This is really, really important, this last thing, it's underlined here. If your adults do not get their forms to me on time, your application is considered incomplete, and we will not look at or review your application, and you will not be accepted. Even if you give your adults the forms and it's technically their fault, they don't send it in to me on time, it's still your responsibility. And unfortunately, that we won't read your application. So it's really important that you follow up with these people and you follow up with this Google Classroom and make sure that we have those recommendations. All right, Dr. Zatal?
Just a note on the last one, if you find that it's like the applications are due in 3 days and somebody hasn't submitted one, you can always come and ask us for another copy of that recommendation and give it to somebody else if you can think they can do it in a couple days for you. So there's ways to rally around that. Okay, so you're going to do 2 teacher evaluation forms, so give it to somebody that you've had freshman and sophomore year. They don't have to be core academic teachers, okay? But they should be people that can attest to your good character and have witnessed you doing some kind of leadership. So this is like part of the evidence that we collect. Okay, and then there's also one for the community member. This could be the person next door. It could be the pastor at your church. It could be somebody you babysit for. Basically just a non-family member that can basically verify that you have some good character, okay? All right, the leadership evaluation form. We used to ask for 2 leadership opportunities, but because of the pandemic, we understand that there have been fewer opportunities, so we're just asking for 1 again. And I will say 95% of the time, if somebody doesn't get into NHS, it's because of the leadership piece. And this is hard to attest to, okay? So I'm gonna give you some examples of non-leadership and things that are leadership. And this is where Ms. Lang was talking about, you need to read our definition of leadership, because at some point we have to make sure that you're doing both service and leadership. And a lot of times people want to use service as leadership because it's convenient, but we have to separate that in some way. So we've done a lot of research, and we've been using these definitions, we've just refined them over the years. So it's really important that you read that and understand, okay? All right, so you have to attest to a leadership opportunity that you've had where you had to plan, collaborate with others, and then do some kind of management. Those are the 3 things. Now, we're telling you this now, so if you don't have something like that so far, you can create something this summer for yourself. Just pay attention to what we're looking for, okay? All right, so let's say that you are the captain of your soccer team. Does that count as leadership? Possibly. It doesn't count just by the fact that you have a title, because we don't know why you've been given that title. Is it just the most popular player? It's convenient, whatever. So if the coach just asks you to run some drills that they've designed, that's not leadership. But if you on your own, like we had somebody that got in a couple years ago, they're a cross-country runner, and they designed an entire workout program for their team to use over the summer. And then they got their team involved, and there was like checks and balances for that. That would be considered leadership. Not just by the fact that they were a captain of cross country, they actually did something more with it. Like for instance, you could be a referee. So a lot of times people want to use that because you're leading other kids on the field. Well, kind of, I mean, it's a paid position, so you're really doing what you're being paid to do. But if you then create some kind of training for the other referees, like you've noticed a problem and everybody needs to get better at something, and you've gotten people involved and you've contacted someone that can help train you, that would be considered leadership. Okay, so you have to do something like above and beyond just a title or what you're being paid to do, okay? So go ahead and just take a minute and read through this for just a second. Okay, so I want to talk about the last bullet here, and that's about collecting items, okay? I'll leave this up while you're reading this. So a lot of times people want to use a neighborhood drive to use as their leadership. Once again, that could fall under leadership, but it doesn't necessarily have to fall under leadership. So if you just walk around to your neighborhood and collect canned goods and donate them on your own to the community food bank, that's excellent service, and that's what you should put under service. But it doesn't count as leadership, because who are you leading? It's not leading your neighbors just to knock on their door and ask them for a couple of cans out of their pantry, right? Okay, but this could count as leadership in this way. You identify a problem in your neighborhood or in the community. You gather some friends together to help you work on this. You advertise that this is an issue. Then you go ahead and do the activity with your friends, and then you write about it and you reflect on what could have gone better. So like, you can tip these things into leadership. You have to go above and beyond just actually doing the activity. I'm going to give you a minute to read this slide as well. Okay, does that make sense to everybody, what the differences are? Another thing that we see all the time that people try to use is Vacation Bible School. We don't have an issue with Vacation Bible School, and that's probably great service, that would count. But if you're just implementing the plan of somebody else, and you're just like shepherding kids from one group to another, that doesn't count as leadership. That's still good service. On the other hand, if you help plan part of Vacation Bible School, and you can show us that it's not just part of a canned program. In other words, like if your church buys a program and say, like, here's the Vacation Bible School for the summer, and you just work in it, that's not really showing leadership. If you take ownership of some part of it, you design some activities, you get the other high school kids involved, and then you do something, and other leaders of Vacation Bible School can attest to that, that might be okay. But this is where you have to describe it very clearly for us, because we see that all the time. And so we need to be clear that you're actually showing leadership there, doing something on your own. One of the good markers is, have you made independent decisions? If you're doing that, it's probably more towards leadership. And I said, if you're not sure, email one of us and we'll be happy to tell you, this is where we think it is, but this is where you fall short, so do this, that, and the other thing. We want you to get in if you apply, all right? But we still have to maintain our standards. Okay, after you do this leadership, what you're gonna do is describe what you did on the front of the form, and then you're gonna make sure you write down the 3 things, okay? What was your planning, what was your collaboration, and then what was your management? And then the adult that you give it to says they either agree or disagree with your description, and then they rate you on those 3 things as well. And then they can fill in a little bit of extra, okay? So if your adult just says that you faithfully implemented the plan with somebody else, that's like a red flag for us, okay? All right, and I think we're almost done here, but submission discussion. So all of your leadership forms get mailed directly to Ms. Lang, okay? Or if it's another teacher in the building, they'll just put it in our mailbox. You don't have to give them a stamped envelope. The other section, you will put in an envelope, all your other materials. You would just write your student number at the top of the envelope, and then you would turn that into Ms. Lang during the week the applications are due. And then that green form that says you've read all the requirements and you've signed off and your parents signed off, get turned in as well. And then once we get all the applications, we resort all your forms, we turn them all into PDFs, and then we send them out to the faculty council. Okay, well, as I said, if you have other questions, feel free to email one of us, okay? Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.